turn to section 1.
You will hear a woman, Paula, phoning her friend Ralph about an application to the local council for money for their drama club. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 3. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 3.
Hello?
Ralph, it's Paula.
Hi.
You know I told you we could apply to the local council for money for our drama club? I've got the application form here, but we need to get it back to them by the end of the week. I could send it on to you. You really ought to fill it in as president of the club, but I don't know if it'll get to you in time.
Well, you're the secretary, so I expect it's okay if you fill it in.
Yeah, but I'd really like to check it together.
Right, that's fine.
Like, the first part asks for the main contact person. Can I put you there?
Sure.
Right, so that's Ralph Pearson. Oh, and then I need your contact address. So that's 203 South Road, isn't it?
No, 230.
Oh, sorry, I always get that wrong. Then it's Drayton. Oh, do you think they need a postcode?
Better put it, it's DR6 8AB.
Okay. Telephone number, that's 01453 586 098, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. Now, in the next part of the form, I have to give information about our group. So, name of group, that's easy. We're the Community Youth Theatre Group. But then I have to describe it. So, what sort of information do you think they want?
Well, they need to know we're amateurs, not professional actors. And how many members we've got. What's that at present, 20?
18. And should we put in the age range, that's 13 to 22?
No, I don't think we need to. But we'd better put a bit about what we actually do. Something like members take part in drama activities.
Activities and workshops?
Okay.
Right, that's all for that section, I think.
You now have some time to look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 4 to 10.
Now, the next bit is about the project itself, what we're applying for funding for. So, first of all, they need to know how much money we want. The maximum's £500.
I think we agreed we'd ask for 250, didn't we?
Okay. There's no point in asking for too much. We'll have less chance of getting it. Then we need to say what the project, the activity is.
Right. So we could write something like, to produce a short play for young children.
Should we say it's interactive?
Yes, good idea.
Right, I've got that. Then we have to say what we actually need the money for.
Isn't that it?
No, we have to give a breakdown of details, I think.
Well, there's the scenery.
But we're making that.
We need to buy the materials, though.
Oh, okay. Then there's the costumes.
Right. That's going to be at least £50.
Okay. And what else? Oh, I just found out we have to have insurance. I don't think it'll cost much, but we need to get it organised.
Yes, I'd forgotten about that. And we could be breaking the law if we don't have it. Good thing we've already got curtains in the hall. At least we don't have to worry about that.
We'll need some money for publicity. Otherwise, no one will know what we're doing.
And then a bit of money for unexpected things that come up. Just put sundries at the end of the list.
Okay, fine. Now, the next thing they want to know is if they give us the grant, how they'll be credited.
What do they mean, credited?
I think they mean how we'll let the public know that they funded us. They want people to know they've supported us. It looks good for them.
Well, we could say we'd announce it at the end of the play. We could make a speech or something.
They might prefer to see something in writing. We'll be giving the audience a programme, won't we? So we could put an acknowledgement in that?
Yeah, that's a better idea.
Okay, and the last thing they want to know is if we've approached any other organisations for funding and what the outcome was.
Well, only National Youth Services, and they said that at present funds were not available for arts projects.
Right, I'll put that. And then I think that's it. I'll get that in the post straight away. I really hope we get the money.
I think we've got a pretty good chance. Hope so anyway. Thanks for doing all this, Paula.
That's okay. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a recorded message giving information about an area where tourists can visit to taste local food. First, you will have some time to look at questions 11 to 13. Now listen carefully to the first part of the message and answer questions 11 to 13.
Welcome to the tourist information line for the Valley Food Trail. Here you will find many local food products for you to sample and buy. It is possible for you to spend as much or as little time as you want, but I suggest that you allow a full day for touring this area. Of course, there are many half-day tours available for those of you short on time. Now, it's quite a large area and stretches from Brookville to Ford Hill. For those of you unfamiliar with the area, that means that it is 10 kilometres to 35 kilometres from the city centre, or by car 15 minutes to the closest point, continuing to 55 minutes at its furthest point from the CBD. Of course, apart from food, there are many other places of interest in this area, including cafes and restaurants and galleries and studios. But I wouldn't recommend you go here to see parks and gardens. The other information lines will give you specific information related to these particular attractions.
Before the final part of the message, look at questions 14 to 20. Now answer questions 14 to 20.
But let's go back to food. If we begin in Brookville and head north towards Upper Valley in a clockwise direction, passing West Valley on West Road, we cross over Coast Road to come to our first place of interest, Magic Coffee. This is not to be confused with the Coffee House, situated opposite on the other side of the valley on the railway line. Magic Coffee is next to the Chocolate Company, which is on the corner. Just past the ice cream shop on the corner of John Street is the fresh produce shop. A little further north, we have reached Ford Hill, where we can start our drive southwards along Great Northern Highway following the railway line. First, we come to the organic market near the corner of Memorial Avenue, and then to Olive Farm opposite Olive Road. Just before we come to the next street crossing, we see the Honey Pot, which is practically opposite the coffee house. There is another chocolate company which sells nougat as well, just nearby. Following the railway line along Great Northern Highway, we return back to Brookville. Now, as I have said previously, if you only have a few hours to spare, there are several places that you shouldn't miss. The two chocolate places make equally nice chocolate, but the factory has the added bonus of nougat, unlike the company. Of course, everyone loves ice cream, especially unusual flavours such as coffee and nougat, so the ice creamery is definitely worth a visit. And while the coffee house sells expertly made hot drinks, including hot chocolate, I think your time would be better spent sampling the many products on offer at the organic market. Well, I hope you enjoy your time visiting the Valley Food Trail and enjoy all the wonderful local foods on offer.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Part 3. You will hear a talk on ocean spills.
First, look at questions 21 to 23. As you listen, answer the questions 21 to 23.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I'll talk about unusual ocean spills that have occurred in the world's oceans. In November of 1992, people at beaches in Canada and Alaska noticed something strange. Blue turtles, red beavers, green frogs, and yellow ducks came bobbing toward them. They soon found out where the strange creatures were coming from. A ship from Hong Kong was on its way to Tacoma, Washington, when it was hit by a severe storm in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. During the storm, huge waves washed 12 containers overboard. Inside the containers were 29,000 plastic bath toys. One of the containers opened, and thousands of plastic bath toys spilled out and began to float across the Pacific Ocean. 10 months later, the first yellow ducks arrived on the North American shore. Beachcombers along the shore began to find the toys and reported them to local newspapers. But the people who were most excited by the plastic toys were the oceanographers. It gave them an opportunity to study ocean currents and winds.
Before the conversation continues, look at questions 24 to 30. Now listen to the second part of the discussion. Answer the questions 24 to 30.
Oceanographers drop bottles into the ocean to study these things. But it would be too expensive to drop 29,000 bottles into the ocean at once. Imagine the value of studying the plastic ducks and frogs. This gave some interesting information to the oceanographers. The first toys were picked up in Sitka, Alaska, 10 months after they were washed off the ship. Some headed back into the North Pacific, while others drifted around the Arctic Ocean and headed for the North Atlantic. Many of the toys were swept northeast by the wind and were frozen in the ice of the Bering Sea. They're expected to cross the North Pole and float on down to the British Isles. This reminds me of another unusual ocean spill. In 1990, a ship travelling to the west coast of the United States from Korea was caught in a severe storm. The waves swept 21 containers of Nike shoes into the water. Scientists estimate that about 80,000 running, jogging and hiking shoes, 40,000 pairs of shoes, to you and me, hit the water at once. The shoes were for men, women and children. About 6 months later, people at beaches from Oregon to British Columbia began to find running shoes washed ashore. By the end of the year, Washington newspapers reported people finding hundreds of shoes. In Seattle, thousands of shoes floated to shore. Since the shoes were not attached, they arrived one at a time. The shoes were dirty, but after they were washed, they were still in good condition. People set up exchanges to find matches for their shoes. Oceanographers studied the information to learn more about the ocean. Some Nike shoes reached Hawaii. Others went to the Philippines and Japan. According to the scientists, some of the shoes are on a trip around the world and should end up back in Washington and Oregon. Can you believe it? Many pairs of running shoes, as well as plastic ducks and frogs, are still on their ocean journey. So if you go to a beach anywhere in the world, don't be surprised if you see a green plastic frog or a woman's size 7 jogging shoe bobbing toward you. So keep your eyes out, so you may find free bath toys and even a new pair of shoes. Thank you for attending my lecture.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear part of a lecture on the current and future use of mobile phones. You now have 30 seconds to read questions 31 to 35.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 35.
Okay, now today we're looking at changes in communication, and specifically changes that have just happened or are likely to happen in the next few years. Key to this is the mobile phone, which is increasingly being seen as an all-purpose system rather than just a phone. If you only use your phone for texting and making calls now, you will be amazed at how you'll be using it in the future. The technology has been developed for a range of other uses. For example, phones could be used so that if you are meeting someone and they get lost, you could send them a map of your location to help them. This will save all those complicated explanations over the phone and our poor friends or colleagues trying to drive and find out where they are at the same time. And if you get bored waiting, or if you're traveling, for example, you will soon be able to see TV news on your phone as it is actually being broadcast. This means that you won't have to miss any of your favorites if you were away for a few days. Most people have got used to texting now, and young people send pictures to each other. But what is exciting is the possibility of putting music with them before you send them. And it's not all frivolous. Phones are going to become even more critical in business and education. Some recent developments have a highly practical usage. So, for example, as lecturers, we will be able to send everybody a text to let them know if lectures have been cancelled. And the new phones could have a further use in education, as well as business, as they will enable us to go to any destination, such as when we are doing a field trip, for instance. And from there, to send data directly to a computer so that we can access it when we get home. This means we will no longer be limited by what the phone can store.
You now have 30 seconds to read questions 36 to 40.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 36 to 40.
And it's interesting to look at the different ways that men and women use phones now, as that does affect how the technology will develop. Some research has been done on how people use phones, and some of the results are surprising. One of the increasing usages of mobile phones is to get all sorts of data, such as phone numbers, the weather, train times, etc. And while there's been an attempt to set up connections with things that women might be interested in accessing, it is overwhelmingly men who do this. But what about the traditional use of a phone? To speak to people? I suppose we would predict that it is mainly women who use phones as a method of contact for friends and family, but, in fact, the genders exploit this facility equally. I've spoken about the increased business usages that phones will offer, and I suppose we would associate this usage with men. The survey picked up, though, that women are often working from home or catching up with work in the evenings, so they use phones in this way as much as men do. Most of us are aware we can store photos on our phones. It's an ideal method of capturing a moment wherever you are. Women tend to be the group that keep photos on their phones, but it seems that men use their phones to actually take pictures much more than women do. And of course, all this knowledge affects the marketing that the companies will do in order to sell the phone.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Give it to me.